to reach over and slap the guy sitting next to you on the couch. Basically. All right, so next is the one thing we took out from the prototype. See here in this slideshow we have separate objectives being checked off on each path. That wasn't there in the other slide. One to register, one to rebel. The idea is that we give you both of these objectives, which you cannot achieve both of at once, to put you in a clearly conflicted state, much the way that the illegal orders that Anna Navarre is giving you did in Deus Ex. I still like the idea. Unfortunately, there was concern it would be too confusing, and that was exacerbated by some UI changes that left less space for explanation of objectives than we would have liked. So it had to go. And finally, we added the option to try the exit, which adds the sort of leftward path that you saw in the flow, and which comes complete with its own set of fail-safes. Right? So a lot of these have to do with this issue of unintended action. Now, we wanted a certain degree of uncertainty about this decision. Not that we wanted to confuse the players, but these characters are in a greater moral quandary than you as the player could ever possibly be. You know that this is not really happening. You may care about the story, but you yourself don't really have to live with it. So a little bit of game mechanical uncertainty about what you're doing makes the situation a little bit more tense, which is appropriate until the point where the player notices it. You don't want that to happen. Right? They should still be fixed mainly on the choice that they want to make, and not on how to indicate what their choice is. So it's important to note that you can actually have a dramatic, consequential choice without the player actually forming an intention about what was going to happen. Once again, we can reference that scene with Anna Navarre and Juan Lebedev in Deus Ex. You probably don't have a clear idea of what the ultimate effects are going to be of whether you attack Juan Lebedev or you attack Anna Navarre. But it's still a powerful choice. Again, this comes up as an issue in multiplayer. I can't stress this enough, which is why I'm saying it again. The role that multiplayer takes and how you think about this issue, the entire notion of decision-making is different when you're talking about concerted effort in cooperative multiplayer. You have to think about the consensus formed by a team of players, as well as the decision that may be formed by a solo one. Finally, by definition, since our game has one big point of decision, it's unlike the rest of the game. And in this case, it's very unlike the rest of the game. It's not really a very exploratory game, especially as RPGs go. It doesn't have a lot of moral gray areas. And it doesn't give you a great deal of decision-making authority outside of this instance. But that probably makes this one moment considerably more effective, but it also means that we had to go to great pains to make it clear to the players exactly what was going on and what they had the ability to do in this moment. So let's drill down a little bit on this action versus consequence moment. Well, I've referenced the Lebedev scene several times now. This is one of the main points of divergence between the two. In Deus Ex, your choice is pretty concretely expressed in terms of things you can do in-game. Kill Lebedev, don't, probably have to kill Anna Navarre to avoid having to kill her. In our game, your choice is much more abstract. Register and rebel are not buttons on your Xbox controller. Right? So in Deus Ex, you're choosing an action, in other words, whereas in our game, you're trying to choose the intended consequences of the actions that you're going to take and sort of back solve from there. You need to infer what action you're going to take that will arrive at the desired consequences. So one is kind of more of a process of discovery in the Deus Ex case. The other one is more of deliberation. So which is better? I don't really have a stake in the ground between the two options. One of them was just clearly right for the game that we happen to be doing. And in fact, earlier I defined a momentous choice, at least for today's purposes, as, let's see, a point in the game where the player has to make a single decision through in-game action on a topic of importance, which will have consequences, which you will have to live with for some time. So let's see how these both stack up. A single decision, yes. Made through in-game action, yes. Topic of importance, consequences that you'll have to live with, yes. So basically, the idea as I framed it doesn't really say anything about whether it's the in-game action part or the consequences part. It's the focus the player's intentions. Is this a flaw in the definition? Or is it the point that we should leave open? I don't know. I'd be interested in you letting me know later. What do you think? Now this slide is the last reference to Deus Ex that I'm going to make. And really I've only made so many because I think it's a fabulous game and more people should be influenced by it. The comparison is only a small part of what went into making our Civil War choice scene. And I probably made it seem more important than it seems. Maria Hill is not Anna Navarre. You don't have much of a pre-existing relationship with her, whereas with Navarre she had been your partner. And while she's abrasive, she's not brutal. Also, you can't kill people in our game. There are no jids. This is part of the superhero genre. So to some degree, the consequences of challenging Anna Navarre are much clearer than the consequences of challenging Maria Hill. There's a familiar character that you've been accustomed to playing with in the game space up until this point, and if you kill her, she will be dead, and she will not be there anymore. We had to go to a lot greater pains to set up the consequences of our choice. So this is one of the places where we did so. This is a UI screen that pops up just before the choice scene. People have been telling you before this that the choice is coming. This isn't the first that you've seen into it. They give you some idea of what it entails. But we still whack you over the head with it one more time, and this is where we lay it all out. Some heroes have already chosen a side. The rest of your team will follow your choice. It shows several characters are exclusive to each side. It also indicates that your mission tree is going to be different on each side. It will change the boosts and abilities that you earn. I'll tell you about what the boosts and abilities are. But basically, even having gone to pains to inform the player the game mechanical consequences, this is much clearer on the general point that there will be consequences than on what they are. The clearest thing is which characters you're going to have available to you. It doesn't really give you enough information to base a utilitarian choice on, though, which is to some degree intended. We didn't really want it to be primarily a utilitarian choice, right? We wanted it to be a moral choice. So even though here the clearest element of the choice is the roster, we'll see later, most players did not seem to be choosing based on roster. So, now, remember where we were talking about unintended action? Let's move on from there. This is another change from the prototype, which I was personally sad to see. This is a bit about the contradictory objectives. Originally, as I say, you had two different objectives. You couldn't satisfy both of them. They got collapsed down to a single objective, register or rebel, which gets checked off at the end of the level no matter what you do. I think it's probably less effective this way. We didn't really have a choice, and that's part of doing the first part of talk, I guess. You can talk about your secret shame like this. So the reason for this is really so totally unrelated to our design decisions in this choice. It's all other decisions having to do with the game. The prior game, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, had both short descriptive text for objectives and long explanatory text that you could get in the pause screen, and we didn't have room for that. The reason we didn't have room for that is this map on the left of the screen. We had an auto map before. We went to a different navigation system for our game, and so the maps got moved into the pause screen, not enough room for the objective text, got shrunk down to these short descriptions. And if you're going to give someone two contradictory objectives, you can expect them to say, what do you mean by that? The long text was our chance to say, yes, we really mean it, live with it. Without the long text, we don't have that. So it basically had to go. Would have been nice, but it had to go. Finally, I mentioned the option to exit the room. To avoid either registering or rebelling, that wasn't originally there. I suspect that a lot of players, probably not a lot of them try it. But here's another key point for this problem of trying to interpret the player's intentions from his actions. If you're going to do that, it is important to respond to any reasonable action that he might take that your system supports. And this is one of them. Besides, there's also characters in the Civil War comics who were able to stay neutral. And we could expect our comic fans to be aware of that. In particular, one of the Fantastic Four, the Thing, goes into hiding, and this also happens to be the case in our game for a while. And by this point in the game, if you've been